Everything we do begins with a thought. Every decision, every action, every achievement, and every failure is born first in the mind. And yet, for something so foundational, so deeply influential in the direction of our lives, the mind is often the one thing we neglect to manage. We try to control outcomes. We try to control people. We try to control situations and circumstances, but the real mastery, the kind that leads to peace, clarity, strength, and ultimately success, comes from learning to control our mind. Control does not mean repression. It does not mean denying emotion or pretending we're not affected by the world. Rather, control means direction. It means clarity. It means understanding that between stimulus and response there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose, not only our response, but our attitude, our energy, and the very meaning we give to what happens to us. Control of the mind is the ultimate form of discipline, and like any discipline, it begins small. Little, you must control your mind. There is a child inside every one of us, a small, fragile, reactive, emotional part of us that wants to feel safe, wanted, and affirmed. That part of us can be loud. It can scream in fear, in anger, in confusion, and often we let that child drive the bus. We let fear masquerade as logic. We let anxiety dictate our schedule. We let doubt define our ambition. And before we realize it, we're walking a path that was never ours to begin with. We're living from reaction instead of intention, but that child doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be led. This is where the work begins. Leading the mind is a daily choice, and like any great leadership, it requires empathy, patience, and clarity. You don't control your mind by force. You guide it with purpose. You influence it with repetition. You shape it with truth. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, awareness over reaction, intention over instinct, you are taking back control. And in that control, you begin to see the world differently, not as something happening to you, but as something happening for you, not as chaos to be feared, but as opportunity to be understood. Let me ask you something. How often do you take time to listen to what your mind is saying? Not the loud, obvious chatter, but the deeper scripts running in the background, the voice that says, I'm not enough, the whisper that wonders, what if I fail? The echo of something someone said years ago that still shapes your self-worth today. These inner narratives, left unexamined, quietly sabotage our potential. But when we become aware of them, when we see them for what they are, just thoughts, not truths, we reclaim the power to rewrite the script. Everything in life flows from the inside out. We like to believe that changing our environment, our circumstances, our relationships will bring us peace. But the truth is, you could be in the most beautiful place on earth and still feel miserable if your mind is at war with itself. And you could be facing the harshest challenges, yet feel centered, focused, and strong. If your mind is under your leadership, that's the difference, that's the power, and it doesn't come from a single breakthrough or a sudden revelation. It comes from a little bit of effort, consistently applied. It's a little voice that says each morning, today, I lead. There's a reason great leaders are often described as calm, composed, and clear, even in crisis. It's not because they are superhuman, it's because they've done the internal work. They've trained their minds to focus on what matters, to let go of what doesn't, and to stay grounded in purpose when everything around them feels chaotic. You don't need a title or a company to lead like this. You just need the courage to lead yourself first, and let me be honest with you. It's not easy. The mind resists change. It clings to what is familiar, even if that familiarity is toxic. It prefers comfort to growth, even when comfort means stagnation. That's why most people don't change. That's why most people live on autopilot, driven by patterns they don't even recognize. But you're not most people. You wouldn't be here if you were. Somewhere inside you, a voice is rising. It may be small, but it's clear. It's saying enough. Enough of letting fear make decisions. Enough of letting distraction steal dreams. Enough of letting old stories limit a future that hasn't even been written yet. The truth is, your mind is your most valuable asset, not your resume, not your credentials, not your connections. It's how you think. How you respond, how you interpret, that's what creates your reality. That's what sets the ceiling on your success. And here's the secret. The ceiling is not real. It's an illusion built by thoughts. Break those thoughts and you break through, but this doesn't happen all at once. It happens through small, deliberate choices, waking up 5 minutes earlier to reflect, replacing one negative thought with a constructive one, speaking kindly to yourself when you mess up, choosing presence in a moment of distraction. Each act is small, but collectively they reshape the entire architecture of your thinking. That's how change begins. That's how leadership is built. Little, you must control your mind, and in that little, everything shifts. You begin to see what you once ignored. You begin to hear what you once silenced. You begin to feel what you once suppressed. And from that awareness, you make different choices. You stop running. You start listening. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop blaming. You start owning. And with that ownership comes freedom. Not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within difficulty, the kind of freedom that makes you unshakable. You don't need to control everything to feel secure. You just need to control your mind, because when the mind is clear, the path is clear. When the mind is calm, decisions become easier. When the mind is aligned with purpose, energy flows, distractions fade, and courage rises. This is not some abstract ideal. It's practical, it's actionable, it's real, and it's available to you right now. This journey won't be perfect. You'll fall, you'll get frustrated, you'll face days when the old patterns feel too strong. But remember, it's not about perfection. It's about intention. It's about showing up. Every time you return to the practice, you strengthen your leadership. Every time you forgive yourself and begin again, you grow stronger. Every time you act with awareness instead of reaction, you build the habit of mastery. You already have everything you need, the strength, the clarity, the courage, it's all within you. But it starts with one simple truth. Little, you must control your mind. And when you begin to realize how much of your reality is shaped by the way you think, it becomes clear that nothing is more urgent than taking back the reins of your mind. Not one single breakthrough, not one long-term relationship, not one meaningful goal will last if your mind is constantly sabotaging your efforts from the inside. You can't build a solid life on a shaky foundation. And your foundation is the thoughts you allow to take root. It's the meaning you assign to events. It's the pattern of responses you default to when things get hard. The question is not whether life will challenge you. It's whether your mind will support you or abandon you when it does. This is where most people give up. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack time, but because they never learn how to manage the inner conflict. That voice that whispers, you can't. That thought that says, this always happens to you. That fear that shouts, don't even try. They believe those voices because they've heard them for so long. But just because a thought is familiar doesn't mean it's true, and just because it's loud doesn't mean it deserves your belief. Your mind will throw out all kinds of thoughts, that's its job, but your job, the little discipline you, is to choose which ones you plant and water. Which ones you give authority, which ones you act on. You see, it's not the mind that controls you. It's your relationship with the mind. The moment you stop identifying with every thought, the moment you begin observing rather than obeying, everything changes. You stop saying, I am anxious, and start saying, I'm experiencing anxiety right now. You stop saying, I am a failure, and start saying, that didn't go as planned, but I'm learning. This shift from identity to observation creates space. And in that space, you gain power, you gain choice. You gain access to the part of you that is calm, clear, wise, and grounded. That's the little you, the core you. That can lead when everything else feels uncertain. And let's talk about uncertainty. We all want clarity. We want answers. We want to know that if we try, we'll succeed. That if we care, we won't get hurt. That if we leap, we'll land safely. But that's not how growth works. Growth requires risk. It requires stepping into the unknown. And the only thing that allows you to do that consistently is trust, not in the outcome, but in your ability to adapt. That's what a trained mind gives you. Not certainty about what will happen, but certainty that whatever happens, you can figure it out. You can handle it. You can recover and refocus and move forward again. That kind of trust doesn't come from reading a book or hearing a motivational speech once. It comes from practice. It comes from repetition. It comes from proving to yourself, day after day, that you don't give in to every emotion, that you don't act on every doubt, that you can interrupt patterns and make new ones. And the more you do that, the more your identity shifts. You stop saying, I'm just not disciplined, and start saying, I'm becoming a person who honors their word. You stop saying, I always quit, and start saying, I'm learning how to finish. The identity follows the behavior, and the behavior starts with the thought, always. It's easy to look at someone with confidence and assume they were born with it, but confidence is not a trait, it's a result. It's what happens when you repeatedly show up for yourself, even when it's hard. It's built in silence, in struggle, in private battles with your own mind that no one else sees. And every time you choose control over chaos, discipline over impulse, clarity over confusion, you earn a little more trust in yourself. You strengthen your mental muscles. You become someone who doesn't just dream, but executes. Who doesn't just react, but responds with purpose. And it's worth saying again, this process isn't perfect. There will be days when your mind feels like a storm, days when focus is elusive and discipline feels impossible. But those days are not failures. They are training grounds. They are opportunities. Because the moments when it's hardest to stay in control are the moments when it matters most. It's easy to be calm when life is calm. But a trained mind shows up when things are chaotic. A disciplined mind leads when everything feels uncertain. A strong mind steps in and says, I've got this, when the rest of you wants to shut down and disappear. There is something powerful about becoming the kind of person who keeps promises to themselves, not because someone is watching, not because you'll get praise, but because you know who you are, you know what you're building. That kind of internal congruence, that alignment between what you believe and how you behave, builds momentum. It creates a quiet, unshakable confidence that doesn't need to shout or prove. It just shows up, day after day, with clarity and consistency. That is the mark of someone who has mastered their mind. Not perfection, but presence. Not control over others, but control over self. And once you reach that level of mental clarity, something else happens. You begin to inspire, not by words, but by example. People watch the way you handle pressure, the way you pause instead of react, the way you choose patience over panic, integrity over impulse, long term over short term. And they begin to wonder what you know that they don't. And the truth is, it's not what you know. It's what you practice. It's who you've become through thousands of little choices. It's the result of waking up each day and deciding, I will lead my mind. I will not be led by fear, doubt, or noise. I will live from vision, not reaction. And maybe that's the lesson we've been circling all along. Control doesn't come from force. It comes from understanding. It comes from awareness, from courage, from the quiet strength of the little you who refuses to let fear write the story. The world will always be noisy. People will always have opinions. Life will always offer reasons to give in, to get distracted, to lower your standards. But you don't need permission to rise above that noise. You don't need a title to lead your life. You don't need a perfect past to build a powerful future. You just need to start, right now, with what you can control, your mind. You don't need to win the whole battle today. You just need to win the next moment. You just need to say yes to the habit that aligns with your values. You just need to say no to the story that no longer serves you. You just need to pause, breathe, and remember who you are. That's it. It sounds small, almost too small, but it's not. It's everything, because every big transformation begins with a small decision to stop letting the mind lead you blindly and start leading it intentionally. That is your power. That is your responsibility. That is the edge that separates average from excellence, chaos from clarity, potential from purpose. So the next time you feel the urge to react, to spiral, to run, pause. That moment of stillness is you reclaiming your mind. That breath before speaking is you stepping into leadership. That second where you choose love over fear, patience over panic, discipline over impulse. That's not weakness, that's mastery. That's not hesitation, that's wisdom. That's not delay, that's alignment. You are becoming the kind of person who chooses with intention, who acts with conviction, who lives with depth, and that is what the world needs more of. Not more noise, not more speed, but more people who are clear, grounded, and awake in their own minds, because at the end of the day, all the outer success, all the goals you chase, all the applause you receive, none of it matters if your inner world is in chaos. A restless mind can turn any victory into anxiety. A reactive mind can sabotage any opportunity. A distracted mind can waste the most precious gift we have, time. But a mind you lead, a mind you train, protect, and guide, that mind becomes a force. That mind becomes a lighthouse in the storm. That mind becomes the foundation of a life that is deeply fulfilling, wildly creative, powerfully impactful, and truly yours. And so, as you walk away from this moment, carry this truth with you: the little you is not weak. The little you is not irrelevant. The little you is the most powerful version of you, because it's the one that shows up when no one's watching. It's the one that chooses growth over comfort, clarity over confusion, and commitment over convenience. The little you is the one who whispers, "Let's try again," when everything in you wants to give up. And if you can lead that version of yourself, if you can guide your own thoughts with discipline, love, and purpose, then there is no future too far, no dream too big, and no challenge too great. Control your mind, direct your focus, lead yourself, little by little, moment by moment, thought by thought, and before long you'll look back and realize the biggest victory wasn't in the outcome. It was in the quiet daily choice to take ownership of your mind. That is where all lasting success begins. That is where freedom lives. That is where you meet the best version of who you were always meant to be.